It was a quiet Sunday morning at the Naval Base coffee shop. The kind of place where the hum of espresso machines mixed with the low murmur of veterans swapping stories. The walls were covered with framed photos of ships, medals, and black and white portraits of sailors who had given their everything. At a corner table sat a rugged man in his mid-30s. His short, cropped hair and posture gave away his military background, but his eyes, gentle, tired, and filled with years of stories, spoke of someone who had seen enough of the world's darkness and still chose kindness. Across from him sat his daughter, barely 8 years old, coloring a picture of a boat. Tom wasn't there to reminisce. He was there because it was the only cafe that let kids stay long enough for him to finish a cup of coffee before heading to his second job. Since his wife passed 3 years ago, he'd been doing everything alone: the school runs, the double shifts, the bedtime stories. And through it all, he carried a quiet pride that came from serving his country, though no one really knew how deep that story ran. That morning, a black SUV pulled up outside the cafe. Out stepped a man in his 60s, decorated, respected, and rarely seen without his uniform. He was there for a small veterans brunch organized by the local community. When he entered, every head turned. But Tom didn't. He was busy tying his daughter's shoelace. "Daddy, your friend's here," Lily whispered with a smile. Tom looked up and almost chuckled. "Not exactly, sweetheart." Moments later, the cafe manager approached Tom's table. "Mr. Walker, Admiral Reeves would like to say hello." Tom looked confused. "I think there's a mistake." But the Admiral was already walking toward him, steady, formal, and curious. "Mind if I join you?" the Admiral asked, his voice deep but kind. Tom stood out of respect. "Of course, sir. Please." They shook hands, and something flickered in the Admiral's eyes, a sense of familiarity he couldn't quite place. "You're former Navy, aren't you?" Reeves asked. Tom nodded. "Yes, sir. 22nd Tactical Squadron." The Admiral tilted his head, intrigued. "Which call sign were you assigned?" Tom hesitated, a faint shadow crossing his expression. "Ghost 5. The room went silent for the Admiral, just for him, his face drained of color. The coffee cup trembled slightly in his hand as he whispered, You can't be serious." Lily blinked, looking between them. "Daddy, what's wrong?" Tom gently smiled at her. "Nothing, sweetheart. Just an old story." But for Admiral Reeves, it wasn't just a story. It was the story, the one that had haunted him for over a decade. 12 years earlier, Reeves had led a secret operation in the Indian Ocean, Operation Blue Ember, a mission so dangerous that it never made the news. The 5-man tactical team known as Ghost Unit had been deployed to extract civilians from a hijacked freighter before it exploded. The operation had gone south fast. Reeves had been told afterward that Ghost Unit didn't make it, that all 5 perished in the explosion, saving 32 civilians in the process. He had signed their death reports himself, and now, standing in front of him, was Ghost 5. "Tom, how?" Reeves breathed out. Tom sighed softly. "We made it to the lifeboats before the detonation. The radio was gone, comms were dead. By the time we reached shore, rescue teams had cleared out. 2 of us survived. The other one didn't make it a week." The Admiral sat down, visibly shaken. "We thought you were gone. You were honored, buried, and remembered as fallen." Tom smiled faintly. "Then I guess I've already had my funeral, sir." For a long moment, neither spoke. Lily quietly handed the Admiral her drawing, a ship with blue waves and a smiling sun. "This is for you," she said shyly. "You look sad." The Admiral blinked hard, his eyes softening. "Thank you, young lady. It's beautiful." Tom chuckled. "She gives her best work to people who look like they need it." Reeves nodded, still lost in thought. "You saved my son that day, you know." Tom froze. "Your son?" Reeves nodded. "Lieutenant Mark Reeves. He was one of the civilians on that freighter. He told me before he passed last year that a soldier with the call sign Ghost 5 carried him to safety." Tom's jaw tightened. "He didn't make it. Cancer," Reeves said quietly. "But he always said he owed his life to a ghost." The air between them thickened, with pain, gratitude, and something wordless that only soldiers understand. When they finally stood, the Admiral saluted first. "You were declared dead, but you've been living more honorably than most of the living," Reeves said. "I can't give you back those years, but maybe I can help make the next ones easier." He handed Tom a small envelope. Inside was a letter, An offer for a civilian naval consultant position, steady pay, benefits, and enough flexibility for Tom to be home for his daughter. Tom stared speechless. "Sir, I can't, you can?" The Admiral interrupted gently. "You earned it the day you refused to leave my son behind." Tom's eyes glistened. "Thank you, sir." "Don't thank me. Thank Ghost 5, Reeves said with a small smile. "The man who refused to die even when the world stopped believing he was alive." Weeks later, as Tom and Lily moved into a small home near the base, she asked, "Daddy, are you a hero?" Tom smiled, brushing her hair aside. "No, sweetheart. I just tried to do the right thing." But Grandpa Reeves said heroes are people who keep going even when it's hard. He laughed softly. "Then maybe we're both heroes, huh?" Lily giggled and hugged him tightly. "Then I'm your sidekick." That night, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Admiral Reeves stood on his porch, holding Lily's drawing of the ship. He smiled through tears. For the first time in years, the ghosts of the past didn't haunt him. They comforted him. And somewhere nearby, a father and daughter sat under a sky painted in gold, finally at peace. Months passed since that quiet morning when two men, one thought lost, the other burdened by guilt, crossed paths by fate's design. Tom Walker had begun his new life as a civilian naval consultant. The job was steady, the hours manageable, and for the first time in years, Lily could count on her dad being home for dinner every night. The walls of their little home slowly filled with life. Lily's paintings, Tom's framed service medals, and a small photo of his old team ghost unit. But this time, he didn't hide it in a drawer. He hung it proudly right by the front door. One rainy afternoon, Tom was at the base reviewing new recruits' training reports when a knock came at his office door. "Sir, there's someone asking for you." His assistant said, "Send them in." In walked a young man, mid-20s, tall, nervous, and holding a folded American flag in his hands. "Mr. Walker?" he asked softly. "That's me," Tom replied, standing to shake his hand. "You look familiar." The young man nodded, his voice tight. "Admiral Reeves was my grandfather." Tom froze. Ethan's eyes glistened. "He passed last week, sir," peacefully. "He asked me to give you this." He handed Tom the flag and an envelope, his hands trembling slightly. Tom slowly opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter, the kind only a man of Reeves' generation would write. "If you're reading this, my journey's finally reached calm waters. I spent too many years haunted by ghosts, by names on plaques, faces in photographs. But meeting you and your daughter gave me something I hadn't felt in a long time: peace. You reminded me that true service doesn't end when the uniform comes off. It lives in how we care for others, how we raise our children, how we continue to give when we've already given so much. I never told you this in person, but the Navy will soon open a new facility for veteran families. A place of healing and hope. I've requested it be named the Ghost 5 Center, for those who return unseen, unheard, but unbroken. Take care of Lily. The world needs her light, and it still needs yours. Admiral Jonathan Reeves." So Tom sat there, motionless, his throat tightening. The young man across from him looked just like his grandfather. The same kind eyes, the same quiet strength. "Your grandfather was one of the best," Tom finally said. "He gave me more than I could ever repay." Ethan smiled. "He said the same about you." The Tom stood and saluted, not out of duty, but gratitude. "Thank you for bringing this to me, son."